Welcome to the local campaign here on Rogers TV. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. As we get closer to Election Day, October 24th, we turn our attention to municipal debates. Today's debate is Ward 14, Somerset Ward. And before I introduce you to our candidates, I will go over the format for you at home and, of course, for our candidates here in studio. We'll begin with an opening statement. Each of our candidates will have 60 seconds for their opening statement. The order of that was drawn at random just a few moments ago. So after the opening statements, we'll begin the debate portion here. That will consist of me asking a question to a candidate. They will have 45 seconds on their own to answer the question, and then I will open it up to all candidates to have a debate over the topic. Of course, we'll go over that a few times, different topics. At the end, by the way, of each of those, I will go back to the candidate for whom I asked the original question. They'll have 30 seconds to wrap up. So we'll go over many topics, of course, that are of interest to the residents of the ward and of interest to residents throughout the entire city of Ottawa. At the end of all of that, we have our closing statements. We'll do that in reverse order, and each candidate will have 60 seconds for their closing statement. So let's meet our candidates here for Somerset Ward. We start with Stuart MacKay. Next is Brandon Russell and Ariel Troster. Welcome to all three of you. Really appreciate you taking the time and joining us today. So Stuart, let's start with you. You have 60 seconds for your opening statement.
Hello, my name is Stuart MacKay. I'm a historian, writer, community activist, and public transit advocate who's called Somerset Ward home for over 10 years. And I want to be your next city councillor. I've worked in our community as a board member of the Centretown Community Association and as a co-founder of Ottawa Transit Riders. I know the issues, I know the neighborhood. I've knocked on doors from Preston Street to the Golden Triangle during this campaign. And what I've heard most often from our neighbors is that our city is simply not delivering the high quality public services that our residents deserve. I want to bring real solutions to the council table. Solutions that will help fix our cracked and broken sidewalks, our overflowing garbage cans, our rundown streets and parks, and our unreliable transit system. That's why I'm running, and that's why I'm asking for your vote on October 24th.
All right, thank you very much. Over to you, Brandon. Brandon, you have 60 seconds for your opening statement.
I don't come from a wealthy political bloodline family or a family with a Wikipedia page. Hi, my name is Brandon Russell, and on October 24th, I'm asking for your vote to represent beautiful Somerset Ward here in downtown Ottawa on City Council. Over the last number of years here in Ottawa, public services have gone downhill. We need to be able to recreate the good public services that we know Ottawa can have, from improving transit to sidewalks to the parks across our community. We need a councillor who can address the problems and the real issues that we're facing in our community, from a lack of affordable housing to the homelessness and addiction crisis that has plagued our community for years. I am the only candidate in Somerset Ward with the experience to get things done on day one for our community. On October 24th, please vote Brandon Russell.
Thank you very much, Brandon. And lastly, we have Ariel. You have 60 seconds for your opening statement.
Hello, my name is Ariel Troster, and I'm running for Ottawa City Council to represent Somerset Ward. I would like to acknowledge that this debate is taking place on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I'm running for City Council to represent Somerset Ward to empower and uplift the people in our communities who are fighting for better and who are fighting for change. I have the experience, the principles, and the drive to fight for our downtown communities and for a better city for everyone. I truly believe that a better city is possible. Affordable and reliable transit, safe streets for walking and cycling, more trees and community gardens, affordable housing so we can stay in the neighborhoods we love, a genuine investment in harm reduction and social support so everyone can thrive. We deserve a city that leaves absolutely no one behind. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Excellent start. Let's move on to our debate portion. As I said, I'll send out this question to Stuart. We'll start with you. You'll have 45 seconds, and I believe this has been touched upon in the opening statements. We have an opioid crisis. We have an addiction crisis. Back in January of 2020, Ottawa City Council unanimously said that we have a homelessness emergency. It's only worsened since then. What are some of the solutions that you can bring to the table to help out with these crises? You have 45 seconds. 45 seconds, yes.
Thank you, Derick. One of the things that we need to do is we need to build more housing. One of the things that I keep hearing from residents is that the approval process in the city is far too slow. It's taking too long to get approvals through City Council. It's taking too long to get approvals for mid-rise builds. And there's too much red tape for small landlords to bring much needed rental housing units online. The City of Ottawa needs to be a leader on this. We do need funding from the federal and provincial governments, but we need to take the reins. This is our responsibility as a city. We need to use all the tools in our municipal toolbox in order to get more housing online faster so we can get people into homes.
All right, I'll open it up to all candidates. Feel free to jump in.
Well, Stuart, something that you haven't mentioned is the fact that something we need to do in Somerset Ward and across the city is stop the loss of affordable housing. Right now, according to the Alliance to End Homelessness, we lose 7 affordable rentals for every 1 that we build. So what I'm proposing is that the city form a housing acquisition fund to be able to buy up these properties when they go on the market and sell them to nonprofit housing providers so they can maintain permanent affordability. And in addition, yes, we do need to invest incredibly deeply. And from my work at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, I have advocated to the federal and provincial governments for years to get the funding into the city that we need to build not just affordable housing, but deeply affordable housing that our neighbors experiencing homelessness can actually live in.
What I'm not hearing on this campaign is any plan to build new affordable housing while keep existing affordable housing. My plan takes 30% of all new multi-unit housing that has 10 or more units in it to deem them affordable, controlled by the City of Ottawa, so that we can ensure that private corporations are not getting rich off of these affordable housing. We also need to make sure that affordable housing is actually affordable. Someone who makes $200,000 a year shouldn't qualify for affordable housing. It needs to be connected to the median income in this city, and it needs to be truly deemed affordable.
Well,
my plan is the only one that takes care of that.
Well, we have a waiting list in our city that is 10 years long for affordable housing, which is completely unacceptable.
Which is why 30% of our housing needs to be affordable.
Right, but we can't count on developers to do that. That's something that needs to be provided by the city and by the nonprofit sector. Yes.
Absolutely.
But there's only so many levers you can use for developers without deeply investing in affordable housing and not relying on the private sector to provide it.
Well, when we're making 30% of all of our new multi-unit housing builds affordable, we've taken care of that problem.
Okay,
how
let
we do
Stuart.
that.
Let me let Stuart get in here. Go ahead, Stuart.
You know, again, this I think is one of the issues with housing here in Ottawa, is that we spend a lot of time talking about it, and we spend a lot of time passing the buck between the federal government, the provincial government, and municipal government. I want us to be leaders. It's our responsibility to get this housing built, and we need to use everything we can. That means having inclusionary zoning into our new builds. That means shortening the approval process. So small units, those necessary missing middle units of 10 to 14 units, 3 stories, the kind that we used to build, can get approved faster, that don't need to go through the planning committee and go through City Council. We can get shovels in the ground. We need to use all these tools now, and we need to be, again, leaders. It's not enough to just simply talk about it. It's not enough to simply just say that we need more investment from everybody. Let's use the tools we have. Let's start building. We're going to need 100,000 new homes in Ottawa by 2031.
Stuart, I'll stop you there because you'll have a chance to wrap. Anyone else want to jump
Well,
in?
what I want to know is if you want to see a deeper investment, if you want us to be a leader, where are you willing to take the money from? I can think of a couple of huge categories where we're overspending. We currently spend $386.5 million on our police budget. More than 100 community social service agencies share $27 million. When we're talking about the people in our neighborhood that are suffering from overdoses and from the opioid crisis, they are not getting the services that they need because we are under investing in the wraparound supports that people need. It's one thing to house people. It's another thing to actually support them so they can thrive in our communities. The majority of the conflicts that are happening in our neighborhood are as a result of addiction and poverty and homelessness, and we need a much deeper investment in social services.
I couldn't agree with Ariel more, which is why I was deeply disappointed when Catherine McKenney, the incumbent city councillor for our ward, voted to increase the budget of the Ottawa Police Service. Catherine is supporting you, so what I want to know is why you're standing behind someone who has voted to increase the police budget in our city.
Catherine voted actually for and we're talking about my record, not about theirs, but they actually voted for a budget where they were able to significantly reduce the increase to the Ottawa police budget. And I support freezing the police budget going forward and reallocating to social services.
I'll come back to you, Stuart. You have 30 seconds to wrap here.
Thanks, Derick. I was speaking with a young couple the other day in the Golden Triangle, and they were telling me that they are converting a single-family home into rental units, necessary rental stock that we need here. But they spent over $12,000 in minor variance approvals. They spent years trying to get approvals through the city. And they told me that if they knew that how much money and how much time it would cost, they wouldn't have started. We need to get this approval process done faster, we need to get more housing online, and we need to get people in homes.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on to you, Brandon. You'll be able to start. You'll have 45 seconds. The topic is public transit. Everybody is talking about public transit. The LRT is getting, I think, most of the attention, but there's also attention that needs to be made on a bus service that used to be an award-winning bus service in this city, and it is no longer that. We're seeing many bus cancellations. What are some of the solutions you would bring to that? You have 45 seconds, as I said, to open.
Thanks, Derick. I appreciate it. I don't have a vehicle in this city. I walk and I take transit everywhere I go whenever I need to travel across our ward or across our city to access these vital services. I remember a time last October I needed to go to the Civic Hospital. It was faster for me to walk multiple kilometers to the Civic Hospital than to take any form of Ottawa transit. Since day one, I have been a supporter of the Bank Street O train. I have been a supporter of improving our transit. And in the time that I have lived in Ottawa, I have not taken a bus in this city because of the unreliability and the confusion surrounding our bus services. I know the struggles that people are going through. I know how to fix them, and I will get that done. It's a day one issue for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Opened up to everyone.
Well, how could you possibly know how to fix bus services if you've never taken a bus? The reality is that even though we have an LRT, which is fundamentally broken and we do need to fix, we need to increase dedicated bus lanes. We need to adjust routes to focus on getting around within the city. We need to deprioritize the 9-to-5 model, which has fundamentally changed. People need to be able to get around not just during traditional working hours, but to all of their activities. I received an email the other day from a woman who, was stuck till 9 o'clock with her very small child, unable to get home from swimming lessons. That's unacceptable. And also, our disabled neighbors are routinely being left out in the cold. We need to implement same-day booking for paratranspo so we actually have parity for those riders. There's been unacceptable stories of people who have been left waiting for 7 hours for a ride, and that is just not becoming of our city, and it doesn't allow human dignity.
At the end of the day, the focus of the city over the course of the next 4 years needs to be on frequency and reliability. And this is what I keep hearing from residents, especially in Somerset Ward. They're frustrated with the frequency and reliability of the 6, the 7, the 10, the 11, and the 14, especially the 11, which is one of the main routes that crosses our ward. It's a backbone that connects different communities and different neighbors together. But there are 3 things we can do that I would like to do on day one. First thing we need to do is hold OC Transpo to account. We need real performance metrics from OC Transpo. Performance metrics about how many buses they can put in service, how many buses they're not putting in service because of a lack of drivers, and how many buses are out of service because of maintenance. Number 2, the second thing we need to do is scrap the OC Transpo app. It does not work. We have technology today that can track cars, that can track buses, but the app is frankly useless. And residents know it and transit riders know it. And the third thing we need to do is we need to listen to drivers and riders. They're the ones who are on the front lines. They're the ones who know how the system works. And we need to take them into account when we plan transit strategy and planning.
Okay, go ahead, Brent. I'll let Brandon and then over to you.
What I am hearing is problems, not solutions. My work in politics in the last 7 years has been finding solutions to these complicated issues. What I am saying we need to do is, I agree with you, we need to scrap the OC Transport app, but we don't need to just scrap the OC Transport app, we need a vital replacement for it. We need to talk to other builders of LRT systems across the world to figure out if there is another option for this city. If we listen to the people who ride transit, we listen to the people who drive our transit, and we listen to the competition out there for transit, we'll find something that can work for our city.
There is a big thing that neither of you mentioned right now, which is that in Ottawa, we have some of the highest transit fares in North America for completely unacceptable level of service. And right now, that is functionally an extra tax on the poor. People who cannot afford to own cars, the ones who have absolutely no choice but to take transit, they are the ones bearing the brunt of unaffordable transit rates. So I am advocating for a freeze in transit fares and also to provide free transit to the people who live in poverty in our city, the people who are on Ontario Works and ODSP. This is a start. I also think when you want to talk about solutions, how about we stop widening roads across the city and use some of that money to fund transit? We maintain over 6,000 kilometers of roads, and yet we continue to push urban sprawl beyond the Greenbelt. There's a section of Strandherd Road in Barrhaven. It's about 3 kilometers long. It's going to cost $115 million to add another lane. It's absurd.
Stuart, you'll be able to wrap here, Brendan, so go ahead.
I'm glad we brought it fair, because the thing we need to remember is that there is an economic cost to a bus that doesn't show up on time. That means lost wages if your bus is late. That means somebody can't get to an appointment. That means somebody can't get to school. So it's not just fares. Frequency and reliability need to be the key things when we talk about public transit, because there is a real economic and social cost to a bus that doesn't show up on time. That's what our focus needs to be over the next 4 years. That's what my focus is going to be should I be elected as councillor.
Okay, we'll wrap it there. Brendan, you have 30 seconds to wrap yourself here.
What I'm hearing right now is solutions for a transit system in Barrhaven, not one that Somerset residents are going to care about, not one that Somerset residents are going to use. We have the luxury of being an urban area in our city, and people that want to move to our city, looking at our transit system, they're hearing the horror stories of people living here, and they're saying, absolutely not, I'd rather go to Toronto, I'd rather go to Montreal, I'd rather go to Vancouver. We need to improve our transit because we need to be a leader on the global stage.
Thank you very much, Brendan.
Thank you.
Ariel, this one will go to you. There's been a task force created to help revitalize the downtown core. A lot of talk about that. You know, this is part of this particular ward. What are some of the things you would bring to the table if you were part of a task force to help revitalize the downtown core? You have 45 seconds to open, Ariel.
Absolutely. So something, the conversations that I've been hearing as I've been knocking on doors all over the city is how the parts of downtown that are doing really well are the places where people live. So the parts of Centertown and Golden Triangle and areas where many of us are living and working when we are working from home are thriving because they're providing restaurants and services and businesses for people who live there. So there is a significant opportunity, particularly in the north end of Centertown, to convert office buildings into housing. We also need to invest in pedestrian-friendly streets and in the arts and in all of the events to draw people into the core. We shouldn't be forcing them to the city to work if they don't want to. We need to be drawing them in because it's a great place to live and to play.
Thank you, Ariel. I open it up to all.
Well, one of the things that we need to do in the downtown core is create these conditions for growth so we can get real services. I don't know about you, but it is so hard to find a drill bit anywhere in Somerset, in Centertown. We need hardware stores, we need grocery stores, we need shops and services that cater to downtown residents. But at the end of the day, we are going to need more people. We are going to need more people living in the downtown core. We are going to need to look at how we do our zoning in the downtown core, moving away from strictly commercial to more mixed use. But we have an incredible opportunity to actually create a new community in downtown Ottawa. And I'm very excited to see what the task force led by MP Yasser Naqvi is going to say. I want to work with the federal government. I want to work with small business, and I want to work with stakeholders in the community and create a vibrant, lively downtown core in Ottawa.
We need to also build walking communities in our city. People shouldn't have to take our poor public transit if they don't want to. If you can walk, 5 minutes to a grocery store, to a vital services, to a restaurant, to a coffee shop in our community, then you're far more likely to do that. By creating incentives for small businesses, specifically small minority-owned businesses, which I'm the only one who has a plan to create these grants for small minority-owned businesses to improve the walkability of our community, to improve the connection of our community. So you're not walking 25 to 30 minutes to find a coffee shop near you where you can meet with some friends, or where you're not walking to be able to have local places to connect, or a park for that matter, especially one that's safe.
Well, part of the bringing people into the downtown core that's really important, two things. First of all, we need to ensure that we have an active transportation grid that's an actual transportation grid. I've been hearing from neighbors who say that, they ended up buying a car because they wanted to go ride their bike with their children on the canal, but they didn't feel safe getting there. So we need those vital connections so you can get from point A to point B and also from neighborhood to neighborhood. And the also thing we need is a deeper investment in social services to help our neighbors who are living in poverty. The pandemic has been incredibly difficult assaults on Centertown and on the rest of our downtown neighborhoods. And a lot of the conflicts that are happening between neighbors are related to the fact that our city has abandoned people who are struggling. And I truly believe that part of revitalizing downtown is having a deeper investment in the services that help everyone thrive no matter their income level.
And the Bank Street O train would be a fantastic way to do that. But in a publication a couple of weeks ago, you said you were hesitant about the Bank Street O train.
There's no proposal on the table. There's no costed proposal for a Bank Street O train.
What I want to know is why you're creating more red tape for transit systems across our community, and then you're standing here saying we need more transit systems.
That's great. Do you have a proposal? There is no costed proposal for a Bank Street O train.
What we need
it doesn't
to
exist.
What we need to do is the same
Dedicated bus
thing.
lanes are way more affordable.
Dedicated bus lanes are more affordable, but bus lanes going up Bank Street are just, they're not necessarily as feasible. And again, they go back to widening the roads.
I'm going to go
Great.
ahead
Do
and
you
let
have
you
a
spoken
costed
against
proposal?
you.
I would really like to
Don't
see
have a
it.
costed proposal.
Okay,
Well,
so there we go.
We have that answer. Stuart, jump in here, and then I'll come back.
You know, Ariel made a really good point, and I think one of the things that we're going to have to think about is we do need a community center in the downtown core if we're going to have residents living there, if we want to have residents of all types, if we want to have families living in the downtown core, we're going to need to think about putting a community center somewhere. And I think that there's a real opportunity with some of the buildings. I know that L'Esplanade Laurier is perhaps going to be sold by the federal government. That's a unique, iconic building. Is there a way that we can partner with groups to put in a community center where people can come together that provides community access, that provides a place to go, especially on hot days, considering that we don't have the downtown branch of the main public library anymore once the new library branch gets built? Let's think about what we can do to build community in the downtown core.
Okay, you know what? Let's wrap it there because there's only a couple of seconds left. But Ariel, you have 30 seconds to wrap yourself here.
That's great. I think the conversation that we're not having here too is about the fact that the core remains largely abandoned because of the fractionalism at City Hall and the fact that urban councillors have been consistently frozen out of really important decisions that affect our downtown. And also, urban sprawl costs all of us. It costs an extra $465 per person. If we want investment in our core, we need to stop expanding outward and take care of the city we have. We also need to invest in affordable housing, social supports, and the arts to make downtown a more viable destination.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I'll come back to you, Stuart, with the next topic, and I believe we've touched on it, but I want to go a little more in depth, and that is policing. So we have some candidates that have said they want to raise the police budget. Some have said they want to freeze the police budget, talking about reallocating perhaps some of the tasks to government agencies that are paid for by the municipality. How can we make those things happen? You have 45 seconds to open it up here.
Well, thanks, Derick. Look, I'm a real proponent of policing reform here in Ottawa, and I hear from residents far too often that they know that we've downloaded responsibilities on the police that they're not trained nor are they equipped to deal with, whether that's dealing with the homeless, whether that's dealing with mental health situations, whether it's doing wellness checks. These are jobs that the police shouldn't be doing, and I believe that we need to detask the police from these tasks. We need to make sure that we have mental health supports, but it's going to take police reform, and it's going to take reform not just at a city level, but at a provincial level. And one of the things I want to work with city councillors and work with the province is bringing real police reform so that police are transparent, accountable, and professionally trained.
Okay, thank you, Stuart.
Right, well, you're talking about detasking, but are you actually going to talk about moving some resources into the community? Right now, the police budget, it has tripled in the last 20 years, outpacing inflation, population growth, and annual tax increases. We spend a third of that on Ottawa public health. And in Centertown and in Somerset Ward, we spent 3 weeks, we were completely abandoned by the Ottawa police during a time of crisis and extremism. So when I knock on doors, people are looking for real alternatives. And I do think you have a great idea, Stuart. I agree with you. The City of Denver has created a non-police crisis intervention team to deal with conflicts related to poverty, addiction, and homelessness. Crime has dropped by 34% in the City of Denver, and not once has that team had to call for police backup. So I do think we need to have a fundamental conversation about what police are best at doing and what they shouldn't be doing, and we should start moving resources into the community where they belong.
The question of how do we fix the police in this city, the first thing we do is we get someone who is experienced with handling crisis scenarios into city council. My background in politics has been crisis management for almost a decade. What I've done is I've worked with different politicians, different organizations to get them out of a crisis. The biggest thing that I can say to get out of a crisis is you got to know when you're in a crisis. I seem to be the only candidate here that knows we're in a crisis, that knows how to get us out of this crisis by redirecting vital resources, freezing our police budget, redirecting these vital resources to different mental health organizations, nonprofits, getting it out of police hands and getting it into hands of the people who actually want to help our community and make some real change.
Well, the reality in Somerset Ward right now is we have services that are doing a really great job helping people with addiction and homelessness, but they're underfunded. So you end up with a situation in Somerset Ward where we have one safe consumption site with 14 seats and it closes at 5 p.m., which means then you get a collection of people who use drugs who hover around that neighborhood because the service that they would like to use is not open. Similarly speaking, in Dundonald Park, where there are a lot of people experiencing homelessness or who live in rooming houses, the outreach programs that are there to help them, they're also not able to be there 24 hours a day. I believe we should treat everybody as human beings. People who use drugs are our neighbors. People experiencing homelessness are our neighbors. And we need to move resources to actually help people because, you know, sending a person with a gun to help a person in crisis who's having a mental health crisis or an overdose, it's a not effective value for money and it's not compassionate.
But if we're going to face reality, we also have to recognize that Somerset Ward now has the highest crime rate of all the wards in Ottawa right now. And this is a concern that I hear at the doors. People are worried. People are concerned about public safety. Now, is the answer more policing? No. The answer is better policing. The answer is community policing that understands the rhythms of the neighborhood, that understands who's in the neighborhood, that talks to small businesses, that listens to those concerns. I'm critical of the police because I think the police far too often sit in their cruisers and they don't actually get involved at the street level. And I'd like to see more community policing. I'd like to see more foot patrols, especially in Centertown, especially along Somerset Street, because right now, we're not doing policing right in this Ottawa, policing right in Ottawa. And to be honest, I will hold police to account. I believe that we can do better policing in Ottawa, but we do need to ensure that communities feel safe because right now.
Just let Brandon in because you'll be able to jump in quick. Go ahead, Brandon.
Now, going back to Ariel's point about these services are underfunded, I agree they're underfunded. I've been sitting in with people struggling with addiction and homelessness crisis for months on this campaign with the incredible support of Centertown Pharmacy. And they are saying that their elected officials, most of whom are supporting you, are not helping. They're not there.
Okay, Ariel, final thought here before we run out of time.
I think we need to also think about who do foot patrols target. The Ottawa Police has an absolutely horrible record of disproportionately targeting Black and Indigenous folks in our community. We need to be listening to those communities
That's
too.
our time. Thank you. Back to you, Stuart, for 30 seconds.
Thanks, Derick. Police reform must involve developing real accountability for the police. This involves working with City Council and working with the province to reform elements of the Ontario Police Act. It means setting new standards of professionalism, education, and training for police officers. We need to do this as a city. We need to make sure that we want to create the best policing force, not only in Ontario, but in Canada. But it's going to take work, it's going to take reform, and it's going to take leadership around the council table.
Thank you very much. One of the topics, and this comes to you, Brandon, you'll have 45 seconds. One of the topics that everybody is talking about in this campaign, it's one of the top issues, and that is climate change and the environment. And are there solutions out there that a municipality can be doing? What can they do? What should they be doing? You have 45 seconds to open up.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of my career helping to write climate legislation, whether it's been with different political parties or different organizations. And what I've found is there isn't one solution to dealing with the climate crisis. As Ariel has mentioned, stopping urban sprawl is a great way to do that. Increasing vertical farming in our communities and being able to make more community gardens. I've spoken with some of the leaders of community gardens not only in Ottawa but across this country. And if we don't take a multi-step, holistic approach, we're not going to be able to stop the effects of climate change. At the end of the day, there is not a lot the municipal government can do, but but we need to be able to push those boundaries and do everything in our power to be able to reduce our emissions.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there because there's actually a lot municipalities can do. I spent years working for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and actually the strongest potential to reduce GHGs comes from scaling up municipal climate initiatives that are already happening. So here in Ottawa, yes, we need to stop urban sprawl. We need to continue to electrify our bus fleet. Somerset Ward has the lowest tree coverage of any community in the National Capital Region, and that's unacceptable. You know, our city is becoming a heat island due to climate change, and there's so much we can do to incorporate natural climate solutions and greening into our downtown. And there's also opportunities to retrofit public buildings using programs like the Green Municipal Fund. There's tons of potential in the city, but a huge part of it is getting cars off the road. And as we've all talked about, investing in public transit and active transportation is the way to do that.
You know, I think this is one of these questions where climate change feels very existential for people. They look at what's happening around the world and they ask, what can I do on an individual level? And I was talking to somebody on Arlington the other day about this, and I agree, we do need to plant more trees. We need more trees in Centertown. We can all agree on that. And as the proverb goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So we need to start planting trees right away. But we also need to empower individual residents. Every little bit helps, whether that's creating pollinator gardens like the Frank Street Bee and Butterfly Garden, whether that's green retrofits, whether that's ensuring that we prioritize electric buses in the downtown core, especially on busy streets, so we're not spewing diesel emissions along places like Elgin Street, Bank Street, and Somerset. There are things that the municipality can do, but we need to make sure that we also empower residents. We all have a role to play in combating climate change, and we need to start now.
That's why my plan also has an additional municipal incentive to buying an electric vehicle. If we can increase the amount of electric vehicles in our city, and we can increase the amount of electric buses in our city, then we can get more cars off of the road. We need solutions, not problems.
Wait a second, no. An electric vehicle is a car. You're putting another car on the road. Electric vehicles are incredibly energy intensive to actually create, and they cost $50,000 to $60,000.
Which is why
I've been talking about the fact that our city needs incentives to buy cargo bicycles and e-bicycles, which are much more affordable and getting more and more popular, and we need a proper connected downtown and urban cycling grid that gets people where they need to go. But frankly, you know, I agree. I mean, incentives for electric cars are great, but those are still incentives for rich people. They don't make transit more affordable. They don't make it safer to walk on our streets. All it does is add more cars to our streets.
Busing in our city, so is biking in our city.
The other thing that I think we really need to do is we need to start planning for a future where we're going to see higher temperatures. And one of the things that I'm proposing is that the City of Ottawa appoint a chief heat officer. Essentially, a chief heat officer would look at the city, map it out, see where there's locations where we need more tree canopy, where we need water fountains. Are there enough cooling stations? This past summer was very hot. I know, I've been at the doors in 40-degree heat with the Humidex, but we have too many vulnerable residents, too many vulnerable neighbors who don't have air conditioning, who don't have a place to go, who don't have access to water. So we need to plan for hotter summers, and we need to ensure that we're doing everything we can and learning from other cities and best practices.
So another high six-figure salary job that's not going to do anything for our city, as we've seen over the last decades.
I think it's important because this is a health issue.
I agree that it's a health issue.
Heat is a health issue, Brandon, and we need to make sure that we treat it much as we would with any other public health situation.
You know, there's actually a correlation between the percentage of tree coverage and the rate of poverty in cities. Somerset Ward has the highest rate of poverty in the city. We have the largest number of people that live in rooming houses, and we have the lowest tree cover. That's not a coincidence. And also, why are we draining the pools before the end of August? How come they're closing on a blistering hot day at 5 p.m.?
Okay, sorry, that's our time here, but Brandon, you have 30 seconds to wrap up here.
What I'm hearing from my opponents here is that we either spend insane amounts of money to create more jobs to tell us what we already know how to do, or we increase the amount of trees in our city, which I can agree with. However, saying that the tree and poverty ratio isn't exactly a fair correlation, as urban cities are, urban downtown cores are full of young professionals. They're full of families. They don't often have as high of GDPs within them. So we don't have as many trees, but we also have as few doors in our city.
Sorry, time's up.
Thank you.
Ariel, I'll begin with you for this next topic. Okay, we've talked about climate change and the need for better public transit, but there's still complaints from residents when it comes to road infrastructure, and they want them fixed. They want the worst roads in the worst conditions being prioritized. And the other issue they have is it's not being scheduled around other infrastructure, and things are getting paved and then taken away and repaved. It's a big problem that residents have. Ariel, you start off, 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, absolutely. As a city, we need to be aiming for Vision Zero, and Vision Zero means a city where not a single pedestrian or cyclist is injured or killed on the roads. We need safer roads for everyone. We need complete streets. Kent Street, which is in the middle of Somerset Ward downtown, is like a 4-lane highway through our city. There was somebody just hit by a car the other day. It was absolutely tragic. We also need to treat downtown not like a highway, not like a parking lot, but like an actual community. And part of this is to stop expanding roads across the city. As I mentioned before, we're already taking care of 6,000 kilometers of road. Urban sprawl costs each of us $465 a year. If we want to fix the roads we have, we need to hold the line on sprawl.
Okay, I open it up for everybody here.
I 100% agree, we do need to hold the line on sprawl, but what we're talking about is improving the lives of the people that live in Somerset Ward, not focusing on an issue on the, in the rural parts of Canada.
But that does impact all of us in Somerset Ward. The more money we spend to sprawl outside of the city, the less resources we have downtown.
Absolutely. So what I am saying is we need to invest in resources. My father was an insurance adjuster, and he investigated car accidents all throughout my childhood. And I remember I used to go with him to some of these accident scenes and bring out the tape measure and see exactly what happened, and I would help him figure it out. So I grew up around reducing accidents and reducing these traffic problems within the Vision Zero pledge, which I have signed on to. But what we need isn't something that just stops traffic altogether, because that's unrealistic for our city.
Go ahead,
You know,
Stuart.
over the past couple of months, I've been talking to residents, and I've been talking a lot about the condition of our sidewalks. I seem to talk about it all the time. And it's because I keep hearing about it at the doors. I was actually talking to somebody at the door the other day, and we were talking about the condition of sidewalks in Ottawa, and she pointed above her eye where she fell on Laurier because she hit a curb that was cracked, that was broken, that was heaving, resulting in a couple stitches. I have a lot of friends who use mobility devices. They use power wheelchairs, they use walkers. And the state of our sidewalks in Somerset Ward is abysmal. Too many are cracked and heaving. We need to prioritize that, because if we want to create a walkable community, if we want to create a livable community, we need to make sure that people can get around of all ages and abilities.
Yeah, well, and something we're not talking about too, because of course it's summer while we're recording this debate, but snow clearing is a huge accessibility issue in our neighborhood. It's very interesting. In Sweden, they did a gender-based analysis of snow clearing, and what they decided to do was, because it's mostly women and children who use sidewalks and routes to school, they clear sidewalks first. And a huge problem in Ottawa, we all know this, is when the snowplow comes, it creates a snow mountain at a curb cut, then that snow mountain freezes and it renders the sidewalk completely absolutely inaccessible. I have a neighbor who is disabled in a scooter, and she is unable to use a regular bus, which is 2 blocks from her house, because she can't get there on her device on our winter sidewalks, and that's unacceptable.
When I was younger, when I was about 12 years old, I was diagnosed with a condition called knock-kneed syndrome. And many of you won't know what that is, but it's a syndrome that essentially pushes my knees close together. And I ended up using a scooter and mobility devices for 5 or 6 years before I was able to get it fixed. And I was one of the lucky few who had the resources to be able to gain my full mobility back. But I understand what it's like to not have sidewalks that are abled for scooters or mobility devices, to use crutches and a wheelchair and a mobility scooter for so many years. So I agree, we need to be able to improve our sidewalks in the city. We need to improve our mobility
And
resources.
we just can't stop with sidewalks too. We need
Absolutely.
to take the opportunity when we do full road reconstructions. And we have a lot of aging infrastructure in Somerset Ward. We're one of the oldest neighborhoods in Ottawa. So when we do these full road reconstructions, when we replace things like aging sewer lines, we make sure that we build a complete street, a street that's safer, where speeds are slower, where there's good quality sidewalks, where there's traffic calming, and there's an opportunity to install more greenery and trees. So we need to take that opportunity to make sure that we're building these complete streets when we do these road reconstructions to replace some of our aging infrastructure, which we have a lot of at Somerset Ward.
Brandon, do you want to jump in? Because Ariel, you'll have a chance to wrap.
Absolutely. So what I think that I'm hearing today is that we all agree that we need to fix our sidewalks. We all agree that we need to improve mobility. But when it comes to the actual opportunities to do it, and when it comes to experience, I have lived experience. I have experience connecting with voters. I have experience working in these industries, and I know how to get it done and make it a day one issue while walking and chewing gum at the same time.
Thank you, Brendan. Ariel, you have 30 seconds to wrap up here.
I think that we can dream bigger than fixing our sidewalks, which is absolutely important. But I dream of a city where elegant design helps reduce road fatalities, where you can walk and cycle without any fear of being hurt, and where you could cycle beside someone because the path is wide enough for you to actually have space. I cycle through the city with my 10-year-old daughter. I feel intimately how unsafe our streets are, and we really need to do so much better.
Okay, thank you all. That was excellent. All right, so that ends the debate portion. We're going to change the format here. I'll go in reverse order and starting with Ariel. So this format is asking a question to each candidate. You'll have 60 seconds. Same topic. Everyone will have 60 seconds. There's no debate whatsoever on this. Let's talk about transparency, because many residents feel there's a lack of transparency. There's a lack of public consultation. They're hoping and looking for innovative ways to communicate with their city councillors. How can we make sure and ensure our residents are heard? Ariel, you have 60 seconds here.
Absolutely. One of the things that's really important is to ensure that we have a balance of urban and rural councillors on all of our major committees and stop what has been happening at City Hall, where councillors inside the Greenbelt are frozen out of major decisions that are incredibly important for our downtown core. I also believe that we should continue to allow virtual community consultations, both at City Council and at the Ottawa Police Board, because COVID is not over, and also people don't have all day to wait 8 hours to go speak for 5 minutes at City Hall. I believe in absolute transparency when it comes to city consultations. We also need to stop signing secretive public-private partnership deals that don't allow for actual community input and are fundamentally undemocratic in nature. I would like to see stronger partnerships with nonprofits who have a record of getting affordable housing built, and I would also like to see us commit to the city's anti-racism policy and an LGBTQS policy for our city to help folks from that community.
Thank you very much, Ariel. Brendan, over to you. Same topic, 60 seconds.
One of the most fundamental things that I think of when it comes to a city, or any level of government for that matter, is it's there to protect its constituents. It's there to protect its residents. That being said, we cannot be doing so on a secretive basis. Are there things in every level of government, in every country, in every municipality around the world that the general public probably shouldn't know about? Absolutely, and we do need to be careful about how much is presented, especially before we've got a conclusion on exactly what happened. However, one of the main planks of my policy and of my platform has been transparency, has been telling the community about what's going on, where their money is going. I plan to host weekly office opens with the constituents here, where they can walk in, have a cup of coffee with me, and tell me about what's going on, what they need to feel, heard and listened to in our community. And I plan to do the same with our federal and provincial elected officials in a roundtable.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Thank you. Time's up. Stuart, same topic, 60 seconds.
Thank you, Derick. I agree. One of the positives, and probably one of the few positives that came out of COVID, was the city took the opportunity to do virtual consultations, to allow delegations to appear via Zoom. As somebody who's sat through 8, 9, 10-hour budget meetings on the Transit Commission, it's a welcome change because you get to hear more voices. You get to hear more voices about crucial city issues. You get to hear from single moms, from students, from other communities that wouldn't. So we need to ensure that we keep those virtual delegations going forward in the next term of council. The other thing that we're going to need to do is, the last term of council was so dysfunctional and so toxic. We need councillors who are going to collaborate. We have different issues here in Somerset Ward. I recognize that. But we need to collaborate with suburban, with rural councillors to find real results, to get real action for city residents. Residents don't really care about the political games. They just want to make sure that things get done, that their street is plowed, that their garbage is picked up, and that their sidewalks are safe.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question. I'll start with you this time, Brendan. Again, you'll have 60 seconds for this topic. There's a lot of concern over the growing debt here in the city of Ottawa. It's over $3 billion. People are wondering, residents are wondering what we're going to do and where we're going to set the tax rate over the next 4 years, taking that into account. You have 60 seconds to answer.
Absolutely, and I was just looking over our tax policy the other day with my team. What I've come up with is a increase in property taxes for individuals with homes valued over $1.2 million. Freezing property taxes for homes worth less than $1.2 million. People that are making, insane amounts of money in our community that are not paying their fair share of taxes, that needs to change. If we propose a 5% increase on properties valued at over $1.2 million, which is less than 6% of our ward, what we're able to do is we're able to reinvest in services in our community. I've promised $3 million as an increased budget to Ottawa Public Health. I want to do a Bank Street O train. I want to invest in a lot of services. And we do need to invest in services now. But what we also need to do is ensure that we can have a balanced budget. And the budget will be balanced if we invest in ourselves.
Thank you very much. Stuart, over to you. 60 seconds for the same question.
Thanks, Derick. One of the things, we know that the cost of living has gone up. I see it every time I go to Macine's to pick up my weekly groceries. It's costing more to live. So we need to make sure that any property tax increases are kept within that 3% range. But we also have to remember that the City of Ottawa is essentially a $4 billion corporation. This is what City Councillors' responsibility is. So are there ways that we can spend smarter? Are there ways that we can spend that help the community rather than spending on pet projects that don't work? Last year we underspent by about $1 million on sidewalk repair, but at the same time we're giving out tax breaks to Porsche dealerships. I don't think that's a good priority. I'd like to see more of our money go into repairing that infrastructure, and to be honest, less of our money go into Porsche dealerships.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll leave it at that. We head over to you, Ariel. You have 60 seconds for the same topic. Go ahead.
So the reality is that municipalities in Canada, we manage 60% of the infrastructure and we only get 10% of the tax dollar. I get it. Property taxes are not popular. They're a really inadequate funding tool for cities that have been asked to carry more and more of the burden, especially since the provincial downloading over the last 30 years. I would be suspicious of anyone who promises a property tax freeze of any kind, because that means cuts to services, and that means cuts to services to the most vulnerable people in our city, the majority of whom live in Somerset Ward. I think we should tie the property tax rate to the rate of inflation, and I agree, no more tax incentives or rebates to Porsche dealerships. We also need to stop widening roads, and we need to hold the line on the ballooning police budget. We also need to stop signing expensive and secretive P3 deals that send money to corporations instead of actually investing them in the services that we need.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we'll come back to Stuart here for this one. You'll have 60 seconds. We've heard a lot of talk about developers and donations being made public if somebody's connected, but we do have to work with developers. How can we work with developers better with taking in mind that there is a need for intensification and more development? You have 60 seconds.
Thanks, Derick. Well, I've promised not to take any donations from developers. I believe that that's a firm campaign pledge that I've made. But at the end of the day, we are going to need to work with developers to intensify, to build the housing that we need, to build those 100,000 units of housing that we're going to need by 2031. But what we need to do is work with developers to make sure that the process gets houses built faster. We also are going to need to make sure that we have that community consultation, especially for these big high rises. I wasn't pleased with the way that the community consultation went for that big high rise, which is going up at Somerset and O'Connor. I don't think that it fits in with the context of the neighborhood, but there's a lot of developments that we can actually we can start building these smaller 10 to 14 unit missing middle units, this important rental stock that we need, but we need to make sure that the approval process is fast so we can get this stuff built. But I will work with anybody to get more housing built, because at the end of the day, getting housing is most important.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Brandon. Brandon, you have 60 seconds on the topic.
Let me be clear. We need to tell developers that their gravy train is over in this city. My plan that forces 30% of all new multi-unit developments to be managed affordably and by the city effectively does this. It does not allow for developers to continue to exploit our most vulnerable peoples. This way, we can have more high-rise properties built because it incentivizes everyone. If you have a 150-unit building going up, 30% of those, 45 units, are going to be affordable. So it increases the amount of housing stock across our community, while decreasing the amount of concern between developers and City Council. I hear a lot of talk here about candidates not willing to take donations from developers. I made that campaign promise on day one here as well, but I'm hearing that from all three of us here, and I want to know if my opponents will commit to releasing their returns 2 days before the election.
Time is up. Ariel, same topic for you. Again, 60 seconds.
Well, I'm glad to see all the candidates here in Somerset Ward are not taking donations from developers. That's a good thing. We need to stop the over-influence of developers on City Hall. We need to take a look at the inclusionary zoning policy that's been proposed and place real targets for affordable rental housing in there. But we also need developers to stop holding projects hostage. So there's a situation where a low-rise building on Nepean Street is being demolished to create surface parking because the developer has some sort of a swap with the developer nearby because he wants to build more housing on top of an office building. And the developer basically said, we're not going to build the 300 units unless we can demolish this other low-rise, and that's completely unacceptable. I also think there's lots of levers we can use, like waiving zoning requirements for nonprofit housing that are within certain parameters, and also potentially waiving property taxes for nonprofit developers. There are lots of ways to get housing built. I believe in partnership with everyone across the table.
Excellent. Wow. What a great debate and great Q&A. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. Okay, it's now time for our closing statements. Ariel, we start with you. You have 60 seconds for your closing statements.
This municipal election is a chance to imagine what our city could be and to elect the people to fight to make it happen. I have been an advocate and a community champion for my entire life, and I spent the last 5 years working with municipalities across Canada as part of my job. I know how to work with people across the political spectrum. I'm deeply committed to transparent community consultations. I work hard, I fight for what's right, and I get things done. It's time to build a city that works for people. A place where you can expect the bus to come on time, where the pool is open when it's hot, where you can walk safely on the sidewalks. But we also need to build a world-class city with vision. And all of this is possible if we work together. Visit arieltroster.com and join our campaign for a city that leaves no one behind.
Thank you very much, Ariel. Over to you. Brandon, again, you have 60 seconds for your closing statement.
They say fortune favors the bold. I say bold is just the beginning for this city. On October 24th, you're going to be electing a new city councillor, and I hope that you will put your trust and faith into me and my vision for this city. Because it's not just my vision, it's our vision. It's a movement to recreate a better Ottawa for everyone, regardless of race, gender status, or anything in our community. Sexual orientation, because together we can all stand united. We can create a better city where people work and live and organize together. I hope that on October 24th, I can count on your vote and that we together can create a movement. My background has been working together in politics with every different political organization. I know how to work across the aisle. I am the only candidate with political experience in this ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, Stuart, over to you. Again, you'll have 60 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Derick for moderating this debate. And I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for participating in our democratic process. Today, I've had the opportunity to share a bit about my vision for Somerset Ward. I know that my work as a community activist and as a public transit advocate has given me the experience to be ready on day one to serve your community as your next city councillor. We're facing real challenges in our community. Sidewalks in need of repair, poor garbage collection, a lack of affordable housing, a homelessness crisis, unreliable public transit, and small businesses that are struggling to survive. To tackle these issues, we need new leadership in Somerset Ward that is collaborative, solution-driven, and action-oriented. I hope that I can earn your vote on October 24th, because I know that together we can get Ottawa working for you.
All right, thank you very much. That does it for our closing statements. I'd just like to thank all of you for all the work you've done so far, knocking on doors and campaigning, and for coming in here today and sharing your opinions on some of the important topics. Of course, I'd like to thank you at home as well. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more debates on our website at rogerstv.com. And don't forget, Election Day is October 24th. Thanks so much for watching this edition of The Local Campaign.